I'll tell you a little bit about the evolution of this message. It's not the message I'd planned. Last week wasn't the message that Pastor Sean had planned. I think Beth did plan hers. And so it turned into this series. And one of the things that have come up is the thought of capacity. So about a month ago, I was in Texas doing our annual men's retreat, sabbatical retreat we do in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I was talking to our board chairman, who happens to live in Dallas. His name's David Schoening, and we were just talking. And randomly, he, out of left field, says, I was reading that parable on the talents, and I had this thought. I wonder if that is really about capacity. And then we went back to talking about, I don't know what we were talking about, but we went back to that. But that stuck with me. And I came home and I started studying that parable again. And then a week and a half later, Pastor Beth shares her message, that challenging message, one of those mean ones, like conviction, And if you read the Bible and never feel really convicted, or at times feel really uncomfortable, or feel really like scared a little, then I don't know that you're reading the whole Bible. Because sometimes it can be offensive. It says it can be offensive. Because it challenges us against our own Adam nature. Because our Adam nature is about us. God's nature is about him and others. And so I was going through that, and then from that, I thought, man, there's a connection there. There's a connection between being called to a mission, being challenged to a mission that's not comfortable necessarily, out of our wheelhouse a little bit, a little overwhelming maybe to think about actually doing that. I mean, we like to say amen, but like to actually do that, care for widows and orphans, that's a little scary. When I was a young guy in ministry, before I was in full-time ministry, but we'd go into the care homes, and I got to be honest with you, old people freaked me out. It's like I wasn't comfortable. My wife went in there, and she, was part of their family, and I'm like, I just wasn't comfortable with that. And, and so it's like, I really want to go the next time. But sometimes the Lord calls us to the uncomfortable because there's life in it. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today because capacity seems to be a topic that the Lord's brought up. We didn't plan it. This was the series that wasn't planned. And we want to connect the dots of capacity with calling and mission and being invited into the things God has for us. Meaningful, Sean talked about this last week, meaningful work, meaningful mission, where we have joy when we do it. We're not doing it out of duty or obligation. We're not whining and complaining about it. We're not like, I guess I better do that. I have a friend who went into missions because he was at this big church that we used to connect with in Kansas City, and he said that they gave this big missions message, and they called for people to come forward to go to the mission field, and he said nobody came. And so this is what he said. I said to myself, well, God, if you're that desperate, I guess I'll go. He's a railroader. He was not your typical missionary, but he went up and and spent the rest of his life in missions. Now, I don't know if that's the way to do it normally, but sometimes we feel like, man, I got to help because I feel convicted. And conviction's good, but He has a great mission for each of us. And I believe that our calling is the same. Our calling is to follow Christ. If you look at the disciples 3 years with Christ, you might think these guys why would he pick these guys? They all had wrong expectations, but everyone else did too. They all had no clue what he was really there to do. And he never really told him till the very end. Which I always say, that's kind of mean, Jesus. But he knew what he was doing, because he was saying, you have to learn one thing, your calling. And your calling is to follow me. Just deny yourself. Trust me. Surrender yourself to my calling, to my mission, to my love, to my salvation, to my righteousness. Just surrender to that. Don't keep trying to fight and create it in your own way, because you can't. That's what the rest of the world does. All other religions, have a philosophy that I can become like God, or I can be my own God. And you can't. You'll fail. Because guess what? We're not God. I mean, haven't you proven that to yourself yet? I mean, we don't have the capacity to do that kind of thing that we think is what we should do. He says, just surrender. Just surrender. I have everything you need, and I'm going to invite you into a great mission, a mission of meaningful work. And again, there's two words. Biblically, in the Genesis story, the word is tending. It's a Hebrew word that means to tend. It's work, but it's not like sweat and blood. It's not like the curse. It's not toiling and striving and sweating and worrying about, will I get enough? It was about, God's got this beautiful garden. I just have to harvest, man. Harvest. Maybe a little pruning. I always like pruning. I like cutting things, And but it wasn't about work. It wasn't about fear. It wasn't based on, man, if I don't do this, I'm not going to have enough to eat. I'm not going to have enough. God gave them all their provision. And he said, I'm going to give this garden to you. This earth is yours. Take dominion of it and tend it as a son, as a daughter. Not because you've got to provide for yourself, take care of yourself, sweat, and, be under this heavy yoke. I've already provided it. What are you going to do? Surrender in faith and say, we believe you. And we're going to receive your love, because that's what I need. I need his love, his mercy, his grace, his forgiveness. But we know it didn't go that way, right? And it went the different way. And so 2 weeks ago, Beth was inviting us into a mission, kind of corporately, to consider, taking care from James, taking care of the widows and the orphans. Now, there's many other missions, but it is emphasized by James, that this needs to be a priority in the corporate body. This needs to be something that we consider. And so her challenge was biblical, and it was very purposeful. And for a lot of us, it might have seemed very challenging. And then you get conviction where it's like, well, I suppose I just got to do something. Well, there is something to do. My wife and I did foster care. My parents did foster care. I'm at the stage where I'm probably not going to do foster care anymore, okay? But I'm going to go to the luncheon because there's probably something that we can do. Respite care or something. Because don't we joyfully I want to do what the Lord wants us to do. I want to do it with him. He's inviting us into it. Don't see it as this heavy calling, this heavy load of, here I got to go do something I'm uncomfortable with for the Lord. Do it with, he's invited us into it. Let's do it with his joy. Let's do it with his purpose. Let's realize that he's actually asking us to do it with him. And so that was quite a challenge. And then Pastor Sean last week talked about meaningful work. There's different kinds of work. I think tending is meaningful. It has purpose. It has life in it. Working under the curse with that belief that I have to be my own God, I have to do more, have more, always more. Our whole culture is built on that because it's the culture of, not the kingdom of God, but the kingdom of man. And it's not just in America, it's everywhere. So, what if we understood clearly that we each have a great mission. That's the title that I would have for today. Your great mission. And I want to talk about those three words real quick. First of all, it's yours. God has uniquely, purposely designed missions for you. It's usually connected to passion that he's put in your life. Sometimes, though, he gives you new passion. I mean, I've done stuff that I never dreamed of or never wanted to do. And yet, when he invites us into it and we go, all of a sudden it becomes amazing. First of all, he usually calls us to things, especially missions, that seem what? Impossible. I have a Russian friend. We'd always talk, and his English was pretty good, but we always say, "You understand," and he'd say, "Impossible." It usually feels impossible. I hardly ever go on a trip or do ministry where I don't feel a little inadequate. Sometimes a lot inadequate. Have you ever felt that? Anyone here ever felt inadequate? Okay. Well, there's something wrong with you other ones, because we always feel inadequate. I mean, if we're not, we're probably deceived, because we are inadequate, but in Christ, he says, man, if you just trust me, if you go what I invite you into, you're going to see me, and you're going to see life, and you're going to feel it, and you're going to enjoy it. But we have to take that step. But it's yours. Not in ownership, but in sonship and being a daughter. In other words, he's giving everything you need, the capacity you need to do what he's asking you to do today. And if you think differently than that, that's the enemy. He's not going to ask you to do something that you don't have the capacity to do. And the thing is, we probably don't have enough capacity, but with him, it's supernatural. And then we get to experience something like, oh, I didn't have the capacity to do that. You know, people say, man, you said something that changed my life. It's like, that wasn't even in my notes. You know, that was the Holy Spirit's capacity. But working through me. It's amazing. And that's a great experience. And the second thing, he's going to call you to something that's great. And I want to define great in a way that maybe you haven't thought of it. I kind of see it as God's definition of great when it comes to what he's called us to do in mission. Everyone's equal. Every mission is equal. We tend to think in numbers and, the best. I guess last service, I was talking about basketball. There was only, in my son's era, it was I almost did it again. Michael Jordan. I was getting on to Magic again. But I said Michael Jackson. I'm not even a Michael Jackson fan, trust me. But it's like, no, Michael Jordan. And he was the best. And my son played basketball, and sometimes he'd get down on himself because, he didn't have the perfect game, which there's no such thing as the perfect game, really. But I said, son, if there's only one Michael Jordan, everyone else is less than. And you're pretty good, but I don't think you're going to be the next Michael Jordan. But you could be really good. But if you look at yourself that way, the joy won't be there. You'll never be happy. You'll never be satisfied. It'll never be enough. And sometimes I think we live our lives that way a little bit. Like, well, if I can't be, I was that way. If I can't be the best, why try? But when I begin to do missions work, when I begin to go to places, 2007, we went to Russia, and we did a marriage camp for 56 married couples who did marriage ministry, were responsible for marriage ministry in their churches. It was a whole region north of Moscow. And we met with them. We did stuff. We had sessions, and we did our normal stuff. But we met with every couple. And it took 4 days, all afternoon long. And I'm telling you, these couples were a mess. Can you confirm that, dear? We thought, and we kept saying, and they're in charge of family and marriage in their church? I mean, they're talking like, they're like, I'm done. If something don't happen here, I'm done. And one gal completely just trashed their entire apartment because she was mad at her husband. And I'm like, I don't know how to take care of this. I don't know how to fix this, you know? And so we were done, and I went for a little walk. This is a milestone in my life. I went for this walk, this camp. Back in the day in Russia, a company had camps, and everyone had a month vacation. Half the company, half the people went 1 month to the camp, and the other half went another month to the camp. And they had a great time. Well, in 91, all these camps went away when communism fell. And now we're there 16 years later. Nobody had taken care of this camp, trust me. But they were reopening it. It was bad. It was bad. But it was okay. So I take this walking along the Volga River, which was the beautiful part of this place. These little cruise ships coming from Moscow to St. Petersburg. But I'm having this conversation with God because I'm feeling inadequate. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling like, what are we doing here? I mean, we got nothing really to offer. And as I'm having this conversation really with myself, it's like God says, well, I'm going to enter the conversation. And I said these words to myself. I said, there are 10,000 people that could do this better than me. And that's when God entered the conversation. He said, yeah, you're right. You know, thank you, Lord. Thanks for the encouragement. He said, but I didn't invite them here, and they wouldn't come even if I did. That was a life-changing moment for me because I realized that our calling, our mission is to just go where he invites us. It's not about us. And that's when I thought of the loaves and fish. I only have a few loaves and fish. I only have one loaf and half a fish. But no matter, Billy Graham may have had 100 loaves and fish, and he still couldn't do what only God could do. And that made me realize it's not about the numbers, it's not about the results, it's about my obedience to go where he invites me. And everything switched kind of like this. Instead of kind of whining and complaining and having self-pity, it was like, what a privilege. What a privilege that he would invite us to this place where no one else wants to go because it's not a big deal. And I was feeling totally overwhelmed and inadequate. But we saw God move. We went back many times, and we saw God move in these couples and these, amazing. The gal that had torn up her apartment, her and her husband became full-time ministry people, and their marriage was completely different. You would think these two will never make it for another month, or one of them could be killed. I don't know what's going to happen. Complete transformation. It was God. And we got to be a little part of it because we just went where he invited us. It's great. So whatever he calls you to is great. Don't compare it. Your thing might be a big toe, big deal. The big toe. I have a friend that had to lose his big toe. It's a big deal. Every one of us, whatever you're doing, whatever you have been called to do as your mission or missions, are great. Don't measure them the way this kingdom measures things. Don't compare yourself to someone else because there's only one Michael Jordan. So don't compare yourself to that. Compare yourself to the reality that he invited me into someone's life to have influence and grace and a message of mercy and kindness and love. Isn't that enough? And it's meaningful. As soon as that transition took place, then it also became more meaningful. Like, I'm not doing this. I'm doing it with the Lord. He's invited me into this thing. And yeah, it can be hard. There's no harder place to travel than Russia. Getting a taxi can be a 12-hour ordeal. It's hard. But The ministry was incredible because we saw God doing things that we knew that we didn't have the capability of doing. But because we showed up, because we came, our capacity grew. We had enough capacity to go and do what he asked us to do. We had enough capacity to throw our piece of bread out there and our fish and say, we're in. And then we got to stand back, and that's how our whole ministry's been since. We just wait to see what God's going to do. We call it the surprise. Every trip, what's the surprise? I mean, we got a plan. We got our stuff we do. It's all okay, but we wait for the surprise, and often it just happens around a kitchen table. I mean, it's nothing that you could plan, and then it's just so the joy fills us. So I want to get to the parable, Matthew 25. The parable we call the parable of the talents. The context here is it's at the end of his 3 years with his disciples. It's when he's about ready to ascend into heaven and, before his crucifixion and leave them. And so he's preparing them, and he's for the first time really talking to them about their mission. Because the first 3 years was all about just them learning how to follow him. That's why Beth talked about it. I mean, we if we don't learn how to follow him, know him, spend time with him, build relationship with him, we can't do the mission he's going to invite us into. So the following is very critical, very critical. I did ministry for a long time without really knowing how to follow him, because we had our own strategies. How to build a church, how to do this, how to do that, and you go to school for years and you learn all this knowledge and stuff. It's all great, but it's like, if there's no life in it, if there's no presence in it, if there's no God in it, just our performance and our capacity, it's not going to accomplish much of life. But when we do it the way that we're going to see in this story, it's going to change. So let's go to the parable, Matthew 25, verse 14. You'll see the verses up here as we go. Excuse me. For it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants, his bondservants. And a bondservant is like someone who has entered into an agreement with the master. Like, I'm going to serve you. And the master had his responsibilities, and I have my responsibilities. So it's kind of like you're yielding to it. You're giving yourself into it. I'm not saying it was perfect. I'm not saying there wasn't some bad stuff that went on. Anytime there's servitude, there's rough stuff. But they were giving themselves, yielding themselves to the master to do his work. And when we give our hearts to Christ, Beth talked about the phrase denying ourselves. When I say I'm going to yield myself to the master, I'm going to yield myself to his plan, his mission, his invitation to my life, then something's going to happen that's good. But the next phrase is very important. And entrusted them with his property. He gave them the capacity. He gave them everything they would need to accomplish what he was going to ask them to do, invite them in to do. We need to think about that in our lives, in our mission. Like, if God stirs your heart to do something, realize that it's an invitation, and realize that he's going to give you what you need, the capacity you need to do it, no matter what you feel. No matter what you feel. Because when he enters it, it's supernatural. It's not just your capacity. Now it's our capacity together. And his capacity is 100%. He can do anything he wants at any time. So he's saying, look, I'm going to go away. You're my bondservants. You've yielded to me. You've come under my authority. And I'm going to trust you with my property. It's like the Garden of Eden. Doesn't it sound like that? I'm going to give you dominion. over the animals and the plants and the trees and the earth. I'm giving you dominion over my garden. He didn't give him the garden. It wasn't theirs to own. It was still his. But he said, you're going to have dominion. You're going to tend this thing. And of course, the story goes on, verse 15. He gave one 5 talents to one. He gave 2 to another, to each according to his what? Ability, capacity. We all have different capacities. So we're going to have to deal with that. You know? And it's okay. Because when God looks at your capacity and your obedience to go into what he invites you to, he didn't care if you have 5, 10, or 20, or 1. It's the same to him. He invited all of them into it. The one with 5, here's 5. I want you to go out because I know you have the capacity to do this. Maybe you had the willingness to do it. We don't know all the other details. And then to this one too. But they were all given what they needed to do what he invited them to do. He didn't invite the guy with 2 to create 10 more. You know, it seems like the doubling thing was kind of the thing. But it was like, I'm going to give you all that you need to go in and invest, engage in what I'm leaving you dominion of. And then, of course, he gave one talent. How many of you ever feel like you're the 1 talent guy? Yeah, don't raise your hand. It's okay. We've all felt it. And then if you're the guy that thinks you're a 5 talent guy, well, you should keep your hand down too. But he had received 1 talent. Well, the other guys went out and did their thing, and they got more. They doubled. They basically doubled it. Their capacity, what? Increased. As they fulfilled the invitation to enter into what God gave them a mission for, it doubled. Their capacity increased. It's a great principle there. But to the one, verse 18, but he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Okay? This is what we don't want to do. And this is what we do quite often. We have been offered a mission, whatever it is. God is, and probably some of you, when Beth shared the vision about the foster care, some of you, like, it struck a chord in your heart, like, oh, maybe. And so you signed up, and you're going to go and just at least hear what's going on. Shh. Siri's talking to me, sorry. And then others, it's like, that didn't really spark. But he has a mission for you. Okay, he has a mission. No one doesn't have a mission. And you have the capacity. This guy had the capacity to at least increase one, to engage in what his master had asked him to do. But he didn't. He dug a hole and buried it. And he's going to tell us why here in a little bit. So the master comes back to settle his accounts. He comes back to see how my boys done. How you do? I gave you this money. I gave you this gifting. I gave you this capacity. What'd you do with it? And the guy with 5 talents, of course, he had 5 talents. I made 5 talents more. And his master said to him, well done and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I wish I had time to tell you the story of my life where God said, will you be faithful in little? It's an important lesson in my life. And I will set you over much. Again, I will expand your capacity. I will expand it. If you'll be faithful in the mission I invite you in today, and you'll step into that, trusting me for all the things that you don't feel you have the capability of, I will expand it. That's supernatural stuff, folks. And I've seen it over and over in our lives in ministry. Stuff happens that we had no capacity to make happen. But when we step into it, he's faithful and true to say, well, I'm going to do it. You're going to see expansion. You're going to see life. You're going to see this. You're going to see that. So he says, let's go on and read it. Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over little. I will set you over much. I will increase your mission. I will increase your capacity. And then he says this wonderful phrase, enter into the joy of your master. Now that's the reward right there. That's the reward. It wasn't that, well, look what I did. It's like feeling the joy of seeing a life changed, or someone cared for, or someone coming to Christ. Having that, sensing that joy that he senses is the reward. And if it didn't happen that way, you don't have to be burdened by it. You did what you were invited to do. The results are in his hands. Paul planted, Apollos watered, but God causes the increase. So be relieved. The result isn't what you're going to be judged by. The result isn't what he's looking at. He's looking at, are you willing to enter, engage in the Great Commission? Great Commission, the great mission I have for you. And then it goes on. Of course, the guy with 2 did the same thing. And he also got to enter into the joy of his master. Notice, he wasn't saying, oh, the guy with 5 did a greater work than the guy with 2. They both did the great work. They both did what he invited them to do. Don't measure your thing with someone else's thing. I mean, I was never going to be Billy Graham, but I'm not discouraged by that anymore because he didn't call me to be Billy Graham. He knew I didn't have the capacity for that. And then we get to verse 24. He who had also received 1 talent came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man. Okay? Lie. He didn't know him. He didn't know him. He thought he was a hard man. I think sometimes we see God, maybe not hard, but we see him as demanding and that he's calling us to something impossible, and I don't want to fail him. I mean, it's not always because I'm afraid, but that's what he says next. I was afraid. I was afraid to go into what you invited me to do. You gave me the capacity to do it, but I was afraid that I could mess it up. Trust me, I all the time feel that in ministry. Like, Lord, I could mess this up pretty easily. It's like, yeah, you could, but just enter into it and see what I do. And so, and listen what happens to him. I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what's yours. I didn't mess it up. I didn't mess it up. But his master answered him, you wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown, and you gather where I scattered no seed. Now, you can take that and kind of negatively look at it, but you can look at it positive. Like, listen, you didn't know me. You thought you knew me. But if you had entered into what I asked you to do, you would have reaped what you didn't sow. You would have experienced what I wanted you to experience. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was mine with interest. So take the talent from him, take his capacity, and give it to someone who invested and engaged in their mission. And he gave it to the one who had 10 talents. For to everyone who has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. Again, not for yourself. That's a twist, a bad twist of theology. No, to go where he invites me next and do the work in the kingdom, whatever it is. I'm not talking about full-time ministry. I'm just talking about whatever he puts on your heart at work, whatever it is. Like, don't dig a hole and put your talent in. When I went to college, I always knew I wanted to go into full-time ministry. I kind of always thought I was going to be a pastor, or a teacher at least, a Bible teacher. But music was a big part of my life when I was young. So I went to college, I was going to be I was a music major the first year. And just something happened that year. Too long of a story. But I basically dug a hole and buried that talent. And I set my music down for the next 30 years. Now, that's this picture. And the Lord had given me something that I could have used. And the main part of it was I wasn't good enough. I wasn't the best. That's a whole nother story in my life. But the reality was I was afraid. I was afraid of the competition. I was afraid, there was lots of, I didn't like the idea of doing a bunch of 1-hour credit classes either. But the reality was I buried this talent. I did it with art too, same thing. Now, I haven't got to experience the joy. And I picked those things back up until I came to this church, and I set it back down, the music one. But I paint now. It's just amazing what we lose when we give in to this idea that I can't do it. It's not good enough. God gives us all those abilities to do for the kingdom what he invites us to do. Sometimes he gives it to us just for our own pleasure. I think of Eric Liddell, in the Chariots of Fire. He said, when I run, I feel his pleasure. I'm glad he didn't call me to do that. Well, maybe I wish he would have, because I could use some running. But the reality is that he has this great mission for us, this great meaningful work. And he wants us just to follow him and listen. And, hey, I invite you to do this. And it's going to feel impossible. But I'm going to give you the capacity. You have all the capacity you need, and I'm going to give you all my property, everything you need to fulfill it. I'm going to do my part. He's saying, I'm going to do my part. You just do your part. And you get to enter into the joy of the result, even though you didn't have the capacity to make that happen. So we don't want to walk into out of duty and obligation. Yeah, I guess I'll go do this and I'll do that. And I'll get on a service team because I guess that's what I got to do. I should do that. No, with joy, enter and say, man, I could enter into this. We've taken a lot of trips with a lot of people around the world. And there's two kinds of people on a trip. There's the kind, because every trip's uncomfortable at some level. It's hard going to another country. I shouldn't do that. We're not promoting the trip well here. But the reality is it's going to be challenging. There's a better word. And we've had people go with us. And I'm talking about people who are 5 talent people. People who are 2 talent people. And there's the ones that moan and groan and complain all the time. I don't like the food. I don't like the bed. I don't like the bumpy roads. And it's like, please don't sign up for another trip. But then there's the others who are just as uncomfortable, who are like embracing the experience, realizing what a pleasure it is to get to go to the mountains of Guatemala and serve pastors and serve people who are impoverished, who are going where nobody else wants to go. And we get to come and encourage them. We get to see what the Lord does with our little bit of engagement. You want to get engaged. Don't dig any more holes. Don't bury the things that God's put in you. And I don't care what age you are. Front row, you need to listen to this. You've got a whole life ahead of you. That if you engage, who knows how you're going to be expanded. And for us oldies, there's no retirement in mission. For the first time in your life, you actually have time. For the first time in your life, you probably have enough money to do something. For the first time in your life, you can pretty much choose what you want to do. Choose the mission that he puts on your heart and engage in it. Pay someone to do your lawn, plant your flowers, you know. Of course, you probably enjoy it, so go ahead. But don't ever disengage. And I've disengaged at different times, different ways throughout my life, and there's never joy in it. There's never peace in it. There's never happiness in it. That's why sometimes old people get grumpy, because they lost their joy. And that's why young people make silly, foolish mistakes, because they think they're going to create their own way. God has this beautiful opportunity and calling for our lives. Enter into it. Enter into it. Step into it. And experience that meaningful fruit that comes from it. And when you fail, start again. Start again. And you can dig up stuff. If you're still walking here, you can dig up that stuff you buried and experience it again. Lord, we thank you that you love us so much.